In the heart of the bustling Space Academy, a young human named Kale walked through the corridors with his head low, feeling the weight of every mocking glance aimed at him. His uniform was clean, his posture straight, but no amount of effort could hide the ridicule he faced. The cadets whispered behind his back, calling him weak, unfit, and laughable. Kale? He'll never survive a real mission, one said, laughter spilling from the group like wildfire. Despite the jeers, Kale held onto a quiet determination. He had always dreamed of exploring the stars, of proving that humans were more than what the universe expected. His mind was sharp, and his reflexes quick, but no one cared to see beyond the surface. Even the instructors shook their heads, skeptical that someone like him could endure space, endure alien worlds, endure the unknown. Today, Kale's heart raced more than usual. Today, the Academy's council announced a new mission, a dangerous assignment to a recently discovered planet known for its deadly wildlife and unpredictable terrain. Most cadets whispered with fear and excitement, hoping for the honor, but also fearing the peril. When Kale's name was called, a stunned silence filled the hall, followed immediately by laughter. Kale? Are you serious? Someone sneered, their mocking tone echoed across the hall, but Kale did not flinch. His lips tightened into a thin line, and his eyes held a spark the laughter could not erase. The council spoke of the planet's dangers, a world covered in dense jungles, massive predators, and toxic plants that could kill a human in moments. Most would have quaked at the thought, but Kale's mind raced with possibilities. With each word, he imagined himself navigating the alien forests, dodging massive claws, surviving where others would fail. He felt a thrill that made his chest tighten, excitement and fear dancing together. As he prepared for the mission, Kale trained harder than ever. The Academy's machines tested his strength, his agility, his intelligence, but nothing could erase the laughter from his memory. The other cadets pushed themselves too, but Kale had something they did not, a burning desire to prove that humans could adapt, could survive, could thrive. He studied alien life forms, practiced survival drills, and analyzed predator patterns, every moment sharpening his mind and body for the challenge ahead. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The shuttle stood ready, its engines humming with power, reflecting the anticipation of those about to leave Earth behind. Kale stepped forward, feeling the cold metal beneath his boots. The cadets still laughed, still whispered doubts, but he ignored them. Each step he took was a step away from mockery, a step closer to destiny. As the shuttle lifted off, the blue of Earth shrinking beneath him, Kale stared through the viewport, a strange calm settling over him. He thought of the alien jungles, of the creatures that awaited, of the impossible odds stacked against him. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the journey would test him beyond limits, push him to the edge of fear and beyond. Yet, in that fear, there was purpose, a promise that one day, the ones who laughed would witness something unimaginable. Kale clenched his fists, ready to face the unknown, ready to show that humans were not to be underestimated. As the stars stretched out before him, Kale whispered to himself, "Let them laugh now, let them doubt, but soon, they will see what a human can become." Kale's shuttle trembled as it entered the atmosphere of the alien world. The jungle below stretched endlessly, thick with towering trees, glowing vines, and fog that hid unknown dangers. The moment the landing gear touched the soil, an eerie silence surrounded him, broken only by distant roars and the rustle of massive creatures moving unseen. He stepped onto the ground, heart pounding, senses alert. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle a threat. Kale knew he was far from the safety of Earth, far from the Academy's judgment and ridicule. Here, survival depended on skill, instinct, and courage, not lectures or machines. The first hour passed in tense caution, Kale mapping the terrain, avoiding glowing plants that sizzled when touched, and dodging giant insects that buzzed like hovering engines. Then, without warning, a predator lunged from the mist, massive claws slashing the air just inches from his chest. Kale rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding death. The creature's eyes glowed like molten fire, and its roar shook the ground. He felt the weight of his mortality in that instant. And yet, he also felt a surge of determination. Kale ran, weaving through the dense foliage, using every skill he had learned on Earth, every step, every breath, a calculated effort to survive. He quickly realized that the jungle was not only full of predators but also traps in its own way, vines that could strangle, roots that could trip, and poisonous spores that floated silently through the air. By nightfall, Kale had lost all sense of direction. The alien world seemed endless, every tree and shadow blending into one terrifying maze. Hunger and fatigue gnawed at him. But giving up was not an option. He found a small clearing and used his survival training to build a makeshift shelter. His hands were cut and bruised, his clothes torn, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. As he rested, he noticed strange eyes watching from the darkness, creatures small but cunning, observing his every movement. Kale understood then that this jungle had its own rules, its own hierarchy, and he was at the very bottom. Yet, he also felt a strange connection, a realization that understanding the jungle could turn it from enemy into ally. The next morning, Kale began testing his limits, crafting traps, setting snares, and learning to move silently. He studied the predators from a distance, noting their hunting patterns and weaknesses. Each small success gave him confidence. Each narrowly escaped attack sharpened his instincts. But the jungle was unforgiving, and Kale faced near-death moments that would have ended others. One massive predator, larger than anything he had imagined, cornered him near a river, its teeth glinting, saliva dripping, ready to strike. Kale's heart raced as he calculated every move. He dove into the river, letting the current carry him away while the creature roared in frustration. That moment changed something inside him. He was no longer just surviving. He was learning, adapting, becoming. Something the jungle could not ignore. As he climbed onto a ridge, looking over the endless canopy below, Kale whispered to himself, "This world is alive, it is dangerous, but I will not be its prey, I will be something more." The thought settled in his mind, a spark of ambition that burned hotter than fear. He knew the road ahead was filled with death and uncertainty, but he also knew that each challenge would shape him, turn him into someone no one would ever dare laugh at again. And somewhere in the shadows, the predators watched, curious, cautious, and slowly, a silent respect began to form. Days turned into nights, and Kale's body ached from constant survival. Every step in the alien jungle tested his limits, every shadow threatened death. Yet he began to notice patterns, small signals that revealed how the creatures hunted, moved, and communicated. The jungle was alive, dangerous, but predictable if studied carefully. Kale started setting traps for smaller predators, learning their strengths and weaknesses. At first, it was just for food, but soon he realized these creatures were watching him, curious, cautious, evaluating him. His hands worked tirelessly, crafting simple devices from vines, rocks, and alien metals he discovered in the ruins of an old research outpost. He learned to lure creatures into traps, not to kill, but to test their intelligence, their reactions, their limits. One night, a glowing predator stalked him, larger and faster than any before. Its roar was low and guttural, echoing through the trees. Kale remembered the patterns he had observed, and slowly, carefully, he positioned a trap in a narrow path. He stayed hidden, breath shallow, eyes fixed on the predator. As it approached, it stepped into the trap, slipping and falling. Kale didn't strike, didn't move, just observed, and the creature struggled, hissing, then backed away, stunned, and finally retreated. Its glowing eyes watched him, and in that moment, Kale felt a shift, a subtle acknowledgement from the predator, a spark of respect. From that day, Kale began moving with a quiet confidence, no longer just surviving, but interacting with the jungle, reading its signs and respecting its dangers. He built small shelters in elevated trees, fashioned tools for climbing and defending himself, and even used reflective surfaces to confuse predators. Each success made him stronger, each mistake made him wiser. The jungle was teaching him lessons that no human academy could ever provide. Kale discovered a pack of intelligent predators, smaller than the apex beasts but cunning and cooperative. At first, they circled him, growling, testing, trying to assert dominance. Kale remained still, showing no fear, slowly offering pieces of food he had caught. Over time, they stopped seeing him as prey. They started watching him, mimicking his movements, testing him like an equal. A strange bond formed, fragile but real. And Kale realized that respect could be earned even among creatures far stronger than a human. But danger never rested, and the jungle demanded constant vigilance. One day, a massive creature larger than any he had seen before charged at him. Its roar shook the ground, its claws shredded trees in its path. Kale remembered his training, his observations, and his ingenuity. He led the creature into a canyon, using narrow paths to slow its movement, ducking behind boulders, and finally causing it to stumble into a natural trap. Pinned by the rocks, unable to move, Kale did not celebrate. He simply watched, knowing the jungle had tested him, and he had passed. As he sat on a high ridge, looking at the endless forest below, Kale whispered to himself, "They are learning me, and I am learning them. I am no longer just a human, I am part of this world, and they are beginning to respect that." Somewhere in the shadows, the predators that once hunted him now observed him silently, cautiously, and Kale knew this was only the beginning. The jungle had recognized his strength, his intelligence, and his will, and it would not forget. Kale felt a thrill, a new sense of purpose. The human they laughed at had not only survived, but had begun to master, adapt, and earn respect. Each day brought new challenges, new lessons, and each moment made him sharper, stronger, smarter. The path ahead was still dangerous, but Kale knew that with every predator that tested him, every trap he set, and every decision he made, he was no longer just surviving. He was becoming someone the jungle, and perhaps the universe, would have to reckon with. Weeks had passed since Kale first set foot in the alien jungle, and he was no longer the trembling human who had landed uncertainly on its surface. Every muscle in his body was honed, every sense alert, every thought sharp. He had learned the jungle's secrets, studied its predators, and adapted in ways no human could have imagined. The smaller predators that once circled him now followed at a cautious distance, recognizing him as more than just a threat. The apex creatures still tested him, but Kale had learned their patterns, predicting their movements and turning danger into opportunity. He built traps not to kill, but to control space, to protect himself, and to establish dominance in the areas he chose to inhabit. Kale's mind worked like a machine, blending instinct, strategy, and creativity. He crafted weapons from alien materials, sharpened stones into knives, and wove vines into ropes and snares. Every day he pushed himself further, exploring deeper into the jungle, seeking out challenges, learning from every predator encounter. Every victory, small or large, made him bolder, more confident, more human, and yet more than human. One day, Kale faced a challenge unlike any before, a creature massive and terrifying, its body covered in thick armored plates, eyes glowing red like molten embers, and claws capable of tearing through stone. It charged with a speed that seemed impossible for its size, the ground shaking with every step. Kale's heart raced, but his mind was calm. He led the beast into a narrow canyon, using the environment to his advantage, dodging its strikes, baiting it into traps he had set days before. The battle was fierce, claws slicing through the air, teeth snapping dangerously close. Kale barely avoided each attack, countering with his own moves, using vines to trip the creature, rocks to slow it down, and clever tactics that made it stumble repeatedly. Finally, with one decisive maneuver, Kale forced the beast into a natural pit, its roar echoing in defeat. Its eyes, filled with fury and pain, met his, and for the first time, Kale saw not fear, but recognition, respect, a silent acknowledgement that this human was no ordinary prey. From that day, Kale's reputation in the jungle grew. Even creatures he had never seen before approached cautiously, curious and respectful. He moved through the dense canopy like a shadow, unseen but always in control. His survival was no longer a matter of luck, but of skill, intelligence, and willpower. The jungle had transformed him, shaped him into something both human and extraordinary. Kale took moments to reflect, watching the predators interact, seeing the subtle hierarchies of the jungle, and understanding his place within it. He realized that domination was not about brute strength alone, but about understanding, adaptation, and influence. He was no longer just surviving, he was thriving, and the jungle itself seemed to acknowledge his presence, bending subtly to his will. Even at night, when the glowing eyes of predators lit the darkness, Kale felt calm, confident, and in control. The fear that had once gripped him on landing had transformed into determination, pride, and power. He whispered to himself, "I am no longer what they laughed at. I am stronger, smarter, and unstoppable. I am part of this world now, and they will remember my name." As the wind rustled through the alien trees and distant roars echoed across the canopy, Kale felt the final shift within himself. The human they had mocked on Earth was gone, replaced by someone who had survived, adapted, and conquered. A true apex of a savage world, respected by creatures stronger and smarter than any human had faced before. The jungle had tested him, and he had risen above every challenge, ready for whatever the universe might throw next. Kale had walked through the alien jungle for weeks, faced countless predators, and survived dangers that would have ended any ordinary human. But today, the challenge he had been preparing for was here, the apex predator of the jungle, a colossal beast with armored scales, sharp claws, and glowing eyes, emerged from the mist. Its roar shook the trees and rattled Kale's bones, but his mind was steady, calm, focused. He remembered every lesson the jungle had taught him, every trap he had set, every predator he had outsmarted. Kale's body moved with precision, his instincts perfectly in tune with the alien world. He lured the beast toward a narrow gorge, where the terrain would work to his advantage. Every step, every movement was calculated, a delicate balance of courage and strategy. The predator lunged, claws tearing through the air where Kale had stood moments before. He dodged, rolled, and used a rope made of strong vines to trip the creature, making it stumble into a deep pit he had prepared. The ground shook, dust filled the air, and Kale could hear the beast's frustrated roar echoing through the jungle. It was the ultimate test of skill and courage, and Kale had passed. As he stood at the edge of the pit, breathing heavily, Kale felt the jungle itself seem to acknowledge him. Smaller predators stopped and watched, larger creatures backed away, and even the apex predator, though trapped, seemed to respect his cunning and strength. For the first time, Kale realized he was no longer just a human in a deadly world. He was something greater, a force the jungle could not ignore. Kale's journey from the laughed-at cadet on Earth to the master of the alien world was complete. His body bore scars, his clothes were torn, and his hands were calloused, but his mind and spirit had grown stronger than any challenge he had faced. He had survived, adapted, and conquered, proving that humans could not only endure but dominate. As he moved through the dense forest, Kale noticed that the predators now gave him space, circling at a distance, no longer attacking. Their eyes followed him, filled with caution and respect. He had become the apex, the human that even the most fearsome creatures recognized as a force to be reckoned with. Kale paused at a high ridge, looking at the vast jungle stretching endlessly below him. A strange pride filled him, the pride of a human who had faced the impossible and won. He whispered softly, "They laughed at me on Earth, they doubted me, but here, I am no longer weak, I am strong, I am respected, I am alive." The jungle roared around him, a symphony of life and danger, yet Kale felt at peace, understanding that survival was more than instinct. It was courage, intelligence, and determination. His journey was far from over, but he knew that whatever the universe might throw at him next, he could face it, adapt, and conquer. He was no longer just human, he was the apex of a savage world, a legend in the making. And somewhere in the shadows, creatures watched, their eyes gleaming with silent respect. The one they had once hunted had become the one they feared. The human they laughed at had become the apex, the master of the jungle, and a force no predator could ignore.